Hello. So this is Dixie Gillespie, and I just kind of decided to try to make a little video of how I set up posts. It's not the only way to do it, but we had so many people asking questions, and I had posts to do for the weekend and a little extra time. So I just decided I would see if that would help out. I'm going to try to differentiate this so that if you're an editor, you'll know everything you need to do, and then if you're wanting to set up your own posts and submit to an editor, you'll kind of know what's different. So not to say that I'm going to nail everything, but we're going to do our best. So obviously you want to be signed into the Goodman Project. You're going to start a new post. So new and post, that part's easy, right? One of the tricky things with WordPress, some of you may have had this happen, if you get all busy down here and think, wow, I'm really sailing, and you haven't put a title in, it can really kind of mess with things. So the first thing I always do is go grab my title. Typically, the other thing I'll go ahead and do right then is go ahead and check the log. Now, anybody who's not an editor doesn't need to worry about the log part, but I'm going to go over here to the log and see when this is supposed to go in. And the easy thing is I can just grab my title from there. So I'm going to Control-C, grab the title. This is the post that we're setting up, and it goes in at 18:30 today. So now I've got that part. I can go back here, Control-V, or right-click paste. But there's my title. Now I know that I've got a URL, and then I can come over here immediately and say, okay, this goes in at 18:30, and that way I know that that part's set up. Obviously, if it wasn't for today, you'd have to change the date. Again, if you're an editor and you need to put your slug in, you're going to click Edit right there, and then I always hit End. So what I just did is hit End on my keyboard, dash, put my slug in. Okay, now I've done that part. The next thing you're going to want probably is a picture, and just the picture may be one of the toughest things. I've already picked one out, but I'll walk you through kind of the search process. For the most part, we use Flickr. Obviously, they have to be not only common usage, but they have to be commercial allowed. So I put in a search term, let's say, let's just say boy walking, because this post is about a young boy who's very sensitive. So we'll start there, and then I always want to change the license. You still want to double check it when you find one you want, because sometimes Flickr's search isn't dependable, but we're going to use Creative Commons, commercial use allowed. And then I'm also going to check for modifications allowed, because we do crop and resize and all that. So that's how I start looking, and then I just, okay, where's a post that looks like it's kind of about a sensitive, contemplative young boy about 10 years old, because that's what the article is about. And I also, one of the things I'm pretty sensitive about, this particular article is about a young boy who was mauled by a dog when he was young. A little personal, don't really want something with a close-up of the face that's easily recognizable. That's just courtesy, especially when the article is a true story about a child. So you would wait until you found one. When you found one that you liked, like I said, I've already got one over here, always look to make sure that it's something that we can use. If it just has this, some rights reserved, you can look at what the license really is. It basically just says, yes, you can do anything you want, but you have to include attribution. You must give appropriate credit. So I'll show you how to do that at the end of this setup. But that one's good to use. The other one, there's one that will sometimes say share alike, meaning that you can modify it, but you still have to provide attribution and all that. Those are the only two that I ever use, and I'm always just looking for this, that the only restriction is that you have to provide attribution. You're always looking for one with this aspect, by the way, that's wider than it is tall, or that you can crop in some way to be wider than it is tall, because we have very definite size guides about that. Typically, the medium size is 640 by something. It won't always be the same height, but 640. As an editor, one of the things I do is I just have a folder that is there all the time that's GMP to post, and that's my revolving what I'm working on at any given time. And then once something's posted and I'm done with it, I can delete it out of that folder. So you always want to name your photo something that if somebody wanted to reuse it for GMP, it would be easy for them to find. So I'm just going to call it boy walking. Then I'm going to edit it. I use PicMonkey as a photo editor. Some of you may have mad design skills, and that's great. I don't, so I make it really easy on myself. So PicMonkey is just a free service that's online. You just PICMONKEY.com. You're going to open your post in PicMonkey. The first thing I do in my little system is to resize it to the width that I want. Or if I want to zoom in a little bit on that central person, I'll just crop. Our ideal proportions, 588 by 350. In this case, I am going to crop because I want the figure of the boy a little bit larger in my picture. If I didn't, I would resize to 588 here and then go to crop and 588, and just it would have to be not quite as tall to make the 350. But since I really want that boy right in the center of my picture, I'm going to do that. Save. I want the same name, so that's good. Save to computer. Saves it right back where it got it from. It says, hey, you've already got one of those. Do you want to replace it? Yes, I do. That goes pretty easy. Now I'm ready to put my picture in. Okay? So just to kind of review, because one of the reasons I wanted to do this is I can do this pretty fast. Once you get in a rhythm, you can do it really fast, but I can do it faster than it really should be taught. So basically what we've done so far is we have started a new post. We've made sure that we have a title in before we do anything else, because you go to the next step without a title and it can kind of mess things up. If you're an editor, now's a great time to just go ahead and put in what we call the slug so we can track it. It's your post. So you would edit, hit end, dash your slug. Some editors put it before, wherever you want to put it. For me, it's easier just to hit end. That's all good. And then making sure that it's put in at the right time to match the log. Okay, so that's what we've done so far. And we've chosen a picture and resized that picture so that picture is ready to load. If you're not an editor, you may not be able to, you probably won't be able to load media unless, I know sometimes there's exceptions to every rule, but as a rule, if you aren't an editor or set up as a weekly contributor, you're not going to be able to actually add media. If you have, however, chosen an image, you don't even have to resize it. Your editor can do that. You can even just grab the URL for your chosen image. Just just grab that URL and drop it in the beginning of your post, and that makes it really easy for your editor to go, oh, this is the picture that they want to use, and we can get that set up. But in this case, we're going to add media, upload files, select files. You can tell how much of this I do. It always goes in that folder. And I'm going to choose the boy walking. Make sure it's set up to align in the center. Full size is 588 by 350. If to get the image that you want, you have to make it a little taller, a little shorter, that's cool, but it's got to be 588 wide. Everything that goes in the title spot has to be 588 wide. I'm going to insert that into post. The next thing to think about is what we call the deck, which is, you might see it sometimes referenced as a subtitle. It's also what's going to show up as the excerpt in social media, primarily in Facebook. So we want to think about that. Sometimes you can just grab something really evocative from the body of the post, but you want something that really, I'm going to pull this over from my other screen. So here's my post. You want something that's really going to grab the attention. Most of our traffic, of course, comes from Facebook. So this is what the first thing people are going to read about this post on Facebook. You really want to get their attention. I probably should have pre-written a deck before I started recording, just to kind of speed this up so you don't have to sit through my thought process. But the key with this post, I'll just tell you, is posing the question of, would the mother's decision have been viewed differently and less critically by other people had it been a daughter who had the emotional problems due to being mauled by a dog instead of a son. So that's what I really want to challenge in the deck is, that idea that if it had been a little girl, would it have been seen the same way? So her main point is society values emotional fluency in girls, devalues it in boys. So let's look at a deck. I just moved that over to my screen. If you're wondering where that just vanished, I just moved it over to my other screen that you guys can't see. And let's play with a deck that says we give and one thing that I think about with the deck, if you're wondering what my thought process is right now, is in some places we post, you're going to see the title first and the deck underneath. Sometimes you're going to see the deck first and the title underneath, depending on how the post shows up. So you want it to read well either way, and a little repetition might be good for SEO, especially if it's a really on-brand term like son or father or men. Those are search terms that we want to show up relatively often, but you don't want it to be so repetitive that by the time they read the second one that it's kind of yada yada, you already said that, right? So that's sometimes the tricky part about pulling in a deck. So when we give special consideration to children's emotional health, are we I may come up with something better, frankly, later when I'm not making a video, but we'll just let that stand right now. So I always take out that extra line. Not everybody does. That's a me kind of thing. I like to keep that tight to the picture. And you're going to put in, I've read it out, you're going to put in 3 lines. So it's just 3 dashes. That's just the dash, the hyphen key 3 times, just to create a division so that you can tell where the subtitle of the deck leaves off and the body of the text begins. And you're going to center the deck and your little divider line, and then you're going to do several things with this deck. So highlight it, and we're going to do several things. One of the things that I found, this is just my little thought process, is if the deck is about the width of the picture or a little wider, it's short enough. If it gets much wider, by the time it's styled and it's the right font, it's going to be so long it's no longer a subtitle. It's now a paragraph. So that's just my little bookmark for keeping it relatively short, which we found that short and to the point decks pull more traffic. So you're going to make that italic right here, and then you're going to come down and instead of paragraph, we're going to make it heading 2. And we're also going to copy. So you can't see it, but I just did a Control-C to copy the deck. And then my next step is to go down and do some back-end stuff. So we're going to scroll down. I dropped that in the meta description. And we're going to say it could be son's emotional well-being or children's emotional health as keyword. I'd like to use something that's either in the title or that is in the meta description. So let's say children's emotional health. And you're just thinking about what might somebody Google as a search phrase. That's in the content. It's in the meta description. It's going to be recognized as reasonably genuine. If it's a post that you're all enthused about, you can turn what we call the e-buzzing off if you're an editor. This is an editor's choice. But those are those kind of somewhat annoying ads. Yes, we get some revenue from that, but especially if it's a longer post, it can also interrupt people from reading it if they're not premium members. Another good reason to encourage people to do their $2 a month or $20 a year, and turn the ads off. So this is really, 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 really important. Never post anything. Never let something go live without putting the deck in the excerpt, because that's what's going to that and that meta description is what fills in your social media stuff. Keep going down. You'll see a place for the slug if you want to double check it just to make sure that, yes, you've set it up so that your editor slug is in there. Again, if you're a contributor, that doesn't matter. And then this is now my post, so I kind of need to change the author. This one is by Bobby, so I'm going to go and make sure that it is credited to the right author. And then as I come back up, that's the perfect time for me to put in the featured image. So click featured image, and if I'm working fairly quickly, that means that my image is still in that top bar. I don't have to go find it. If you forget to put the featured image in, you go back to do it later. Sometimes we've had a really busy day and a bunch of editors are putting stuff in, and there'll be a whole lot of images between the one that you want and the top. So it helps to do it right then. Okay, we're going to come back to everything else that's in this sidebar, but I've got my featured image in. So just to recap, we decided on our deck, which you can kind of think of as a hook. We've got the deck in. We've styled it both italic and heading 2. We've copied it. We've pasted it down here in the meta description. We've chosen a focus keyword for the post. We've, in this case, turned off the e-buzzing. You don't have to, but especially, like I said, with a longer, more serious post, it cuts down on distractions for the reader. People typically aren't going to share a post unless they get to the bottom of the post. So we want to give them every encouragement to get to the bottom of the post. And then one of the most important things that you never, ever, ever want to forget before something goes live, we pasted that deck into the excerpt. And since it was on our clipboard the whole time, it's just Control-V or right-click paste. We've made sure that the editor slug is in place if you're the editor or if you're a weekly contributor with your own slug. And we've made sure that the author is correct, which if you're setting up a post that's not your own, you'll need to check. If it's your post and you're signed in as you, then obviously the author is already going to be set up for you. Now it's time to go grab our copy. So I'm going to go back to the Word file. And the easy thing is I'll just drag it over here. Basically what I'm going to do, you can't see it, but I just hit Control-A, which selected every word on there, and then Control-C, which copied all of it to my clipboard. And I really should be done with that. If I get it in Word or can just drop it into Word, I, as an editor, prefer to do my edits in Word. So I've already edited this post. One of the downsides about Word is every now and then Word gets funny, thinks it can read my mind, and sticks in a bunch of empty spaces. So we'll deal with that in a minute. When you paste, obviously your cursor is going to be at the bottom of the post. Now is the perfect time to make sure that you get your photo credit in. So again, I use those 3 dashes, that's just the hyphen key 3 times, to kind of demark this is the end of the really important stuff, and now we get into this kind of stuff. So here's my photo credit. Photo, it's Flickr, /, and here's a little trick. So this is the picture. So this is the accreditation we want to use. If you select from right here, and then again Control-C, so I've grabbed that, and then Control-V, you can see that it kept the hyperlink. There's one little piece of business I still need to take care of though. Even though the accreditation is automatically linked, it's not automatically set up to open in a new tab. So all of your hyperlinks, no matter where they came from, you want to make sure that they're set up so that they open in a new window or tab. Otherwise, you've just given them an excuse to leave GMP, and let's not do that. So just another little appearance thing. I like one little line under that so that because the share buttons are what's going to come next. The share buttons pop a little more on the page if there's a little bit of space. Now because I have a pesky word thing, I have to go in and do my little backspaces and get rid of all those extra lines. If it's a really long post, sometimes this is the kind of the straw that will threaten the camel's integrity. But on short posts, that's not too bad. And it's kind of a price I pay. Now this is the title, so I didn't want that. I'll just get rid of that. And you can see now that what we've done is we have entered our text, just good old copy paste, plopped it in. WordPress has weird issues with hyphenated words and sometimes, or hyphenated and apostrophes. Sometimes it'll try to tell you that's a spelling error, and it isn't. But the next thing that I always do is just skim for anything red, like I don't know what that thing's problem is. Nope, it was just associated with the contraction. Again, associated with the contraction, doesn't, yep. With that. So I just make sure that it's, see that I think is actually, yep, associated with that. Just make sure that anything that's underlined in red isn't actually a spelling problem. I should have caught them in Word, but you always want to make sure because it's embarrassing for the author when the editor messes up, and I've certainly done it. So go through all that little thing and also kind of give it a skim for style. So if you've read the style guide, which hopefully you've read the style guide, you know that if it's a number that was under 10, you spell it out. So the original in this, in fact, had a number 7, or this was 7, and I've already edited that. But if it's over 10, you leave it as the numerical. Look for dashes or ellipses that don't really belong, those kinds of things. I always kind of give it, I'm a little, I wouldn't say I'm a perfectionist, but I like to double check myself at several points. This is one of my little check myself. Okay, so now it's looking pretty good. I've just got some little styling stuff to do. I really like to divide the post and put in pull quotes and stuff because when you land on a page, and I'm sure we all do this, you land on a page, unless you're completely captivated, if you just see a long expanse of text, that your brain's temptation is to say, I don't have time for this right now. You mean to come back to it. You don't necessarily. We've lost the possibility that somebody might finish reading the post and share it. So I like to really break up the text as much as possible, and there's several ways to do that. But I want to preview it now. This is kind of my next, I want to see what it's looking like so far. So I go up to View Post. I right-click and open it in a new tab so I can go back and forth. When I'm working on 2 screens, I'll just tell you normally I would take the preview and I'd scoot it over to my other screen so I can go back and forth a lot more quickly, but then you wouldn't be able to see that. So I'll leave it up right now. So this is what it shows up. Oops, I haven't saved the draft. It still thinks it's me. So save draft and then update your preview. And then I can just kind of glance over it. If I published right now, this is what it would look like. I've got the author. The picture looks good. The deck doesn't look too long. It's, everything's laid out. There aren't any weird, glaring things. Now I can see I do actually have one too many spaces here. I do have a picture for my author. Looking good. So that's just my first little preview. Go fix anything that was obvious. Yeah, I can definitely see that there was more than one space at the bottom, and everything's good. So now I want to do some styling. I have a little style cheat sheet. It says code, and it also lives in that folder that I showed you earlier. And so it's got the code for the divider, the code for the pull quotes, the code for like on Facebook, and the excerpts and codes for a lot of the sign up for our weekly newsletter kind of stuff. I'm going to move that to my other screen because really if I have to work back and forth on that, it's going to handicap me and you're going to stay with me a lot longer than you want to. But just, I'm happy to share it. It's all available in their kind of little fake posts that are set up that have all of that. But I like to keep it in Word. Another little trick, because I travel and I want to be able to do my editing stuff when I'm out and about, I've also emailed myself that attachment, or not an attachment, I emailed it to myself in the body of an email. So if I get caught out and I have to go in and style a post on the fly, it's in one of my email folders and I can always get to it. So if you happen to be in that position, maybe that will be a little helpful for you. So the other reason that I preview it here is I want to see where my natural breaks need to be. I can see that if we broke it up right here, in this little piece of text before she starts the story about her son being mauled, it would be a nice little kind of breather for the eyes, if you will. Like the eyes can take a break right there, and might encourage somebody to keep skimming. The way people read, I think, and other people may have other observations, but this is my observation, is that most of us skim by section. So we might skim over a section, and if we know there's going to be a break in the action, it's like I'll skim to the end of this chapter, right? Except in an article, it's a section. So they'll kind of skim, and if something in that section keeps them reading, then they'll go on to the next section. But if there are no sections and they get a little off track, they're gone. So let's give them some sections to work with. You always want to put text in, or code in the text view. If you put it in the visual view, all it does is look funny, which isn't our goal. So we're going to flip over to text, which can look a little confusing. But we're going to find that point where her story starts, which is right here, right before my son was mauled by a dog. Stick my cursor right in that little spot, hit Enter once, Control V to paste in my code, Enter again. Here's what that does. It puts this nice little, and it's consistent for all of GMP's posts. It's one of the really important things about a magazine, whether it's print or online, is that your style is somewhat consistent. We want to train people's eyes and mind for what they can expect when they come to our site. So that's the code that we use for a divider. We could possibly, and I'll go over here to the preview so you can see where we are. So we know we have a divider right there. Let's skim. Let's see, right about here where she starts posing the important question. So the idea that her little boy wasn't tough enough to be a man seemed to bother a lot of people, and then she poses this really important question for herself. Let's put a divider right there. It's still in my clipboard. I haven't copied anything else, so Control V will do it for me again. And let's see, was I right here is where we get into that questioning phase. And again, put my cursor in, return, Enter once, Control V to paste, Enter again. Now I've put in my spacing. Boom, I have a couple of dividers. Let's take a look at what that looks like. Don't want to publish. It didn't save my time. Okay, this is why it's so important to double check, double check, double check. I don't know if I put it in wrong or it didn't save it, but it's supposed to be at 1830, and it's not at 1830. So I'm going to come over here and tell it, again, 1830. Okay, now even if I hit schedule, it's not going to just go post, which you obviously don't want it to do. So we'll save it. We'll go back over here, and we'll refresh and see what those sections look like so you can kind of get an idea of what the break is. General rule of thumb for me is for each of those sections, I'd like a pull quote. I'd like something that breaks it up visually and also jumps out and says, this is what this is really about. So that's my next order of business, so to speak, is to come back over here to the edits. Pull quotes are the same as its code. So it's going to be entered in the text, and I have 3 sections. You probably saw that in the preview. I have 3 sections. So I'm just going to do a little right, left, right. I'm going to copy the code for the pull quote that will sit on the right side of the page, and Control C. So I've got that on my clipboard. Move that out of the way so you can see what I'm doing over here. And I'm going to put one right pull quote in this section. I'm going to put one in this section. It probably makes sense to everybody, right? So I'll go to text. Sometimes it's easier, especially until you get your eyes trained, to use your preview to kind of figure out. So I might say, regardless of their gender, I was determined to teach them da-da-da-da-da. That's the crux of the matter for this particular mother who's writing. So let's just start in that second paragraph, and you'll see why I did that, and Control V. And now this pull quote is going to align with this second paragraph. So I can come down here and say, and because it's a lot about gender, right, that she's not just raising a girl to be sensitive. She didn't really care if it was a girl or a boy. These were the traits that she wanted to instill in her children. And now you'll see right here what I've got highlighted. So all this code, ignore it. The only part of the code you're looking for is where it says replace this sentence with the sentence that you want to be in the pull quote. So you've highlighted the sentence you want to be in the pull quote, Control-C. Now you come up here and highlight this replace with, and then Control-V and replace it. So you can see when I hit Control-V, it took the sentence that I had chosen and it plopped it right in here. And you can go back to visual to see what that's going to look like. It's not the same as the preview. That looks really funny because the width of the screen is different, the text is different, so don't worry about that right now. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back and I'm going to copy my code again, because remember I copied that sentence, so that's what's sitting on my clipboard right now. Copy my code again. I'm going to come down to that third section, and this is the last pull quote that people are going to see. If they're skimming and they're looking for highlights, this is your boom takeaway from the article, basically. So I want something about this. Either would people have been so critical if my son were instead a daughter? This is really what I want to say. Do we consider focusing on the emotional well-being of a girl to be a good thing, but dysfunctional for a boy? So I'm actually going to drop this in right before the end of the article. So I've done Control-V, dropped my code in. Now I'm going to highlight that takeaway sentence, which is the challenge that we really want to leave them with. Control-C. Highlight this replace blah, 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 Control-V. There's that. Now I have one more pull quote that I want to put in, and that's in this middle section. But just to kind of stagger it for the sake of the eyes, I'm going to use the one that will align with the left side of the page. So Control-C, now I've got my code. Come back over to text view, and I'm just looking for this little puppy right here. Okay, now, or it's probably easier again as you start training your eyes. It's probably easier to find the piece that you want out of the preview than it is in the text version. So what I'm looking for here is, I could even just pose this question, letting them know this is the question that's coming up. So this, though, is a little stronger, I think. Forcing him to face his fears by putting him in situations where he felt insecure was, yeah, that's really the crux of the thing, that she's being told that because it's a boy, or she believes that it was because it was a boy, that that he'd have been better off if she'd forced him to face all those fears. Okay, now I'm not used to working from the preview, so now I gotta find it again. Here we go, in the what did sting paragraph. So I'm going to come back over here. Now I can find it easily. It starts out with the what did sting, blah, blah, blah. I'm going to move up one paragraph from that, so it's really kind of a precursor. That's just personal choice and all that. And here is the sentence that I want. Highlight it, Control-C. Highlight this little piece, Control-V. Good. Now I'm done with pull quotes. I want to take another look because I'm sure there's a word for it, but we won't use that word right now, okay? So I'm going to update it. And once this little puppy quits spinning, meaning it's fully updated, I can refresh the screen. And now I'm not really proofing, I'm just looking at layout. Is it divided up enough that I can kind of pull the eye through it? It's still long, but there are places that give the eyes a break, let people kind of look ahead and see what's coming, what points you're going to make, what's my incentive for reading a little further. Good. So that's all good. Now there's really just a few things that I want to do. One, if this were a reprint, because occasionally you'll do reprints, you would need to put in attribution and link back to the reprint. So you could just go right here and say originally published on, and it helps if you can spell blah, 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 blah. And you'd put in the name of the online magazine or the blog or whatever, and you'd do the same thing. You would highlight, let's say it was from HuffPost. You would actually spell out Huffington Post. But you would highlight the Huffington Post. You would come up here to insert edit link. You would put in a link to the original. I don't have anything open. Let's pretend that's HuffPost. You guys are following me just fine, I'm sure. And you would put it in here. You would put in a title and make sure that you click the open link in a new window tab, add link, and then your attribution back to the original is there. This is an original post to GMP, so I don't need that part. That is one thing that you might have to deal with. Now, the last thing I want to do within the body of this article is to put some call to action at the bottom. I'm going to use the like on Facebook just because it's a little more, there are a couple more steps that I can have on the video, but I could easily highlight one of these and copy it over. So, and again, when you copy these, you're still going to want to highlight the hyperlink, which is, always in underlined and in a different color, and make sure that it's clicked, just like we did when we did the attribution for the picture. Make sure that it's clicked so it opens in a new. Actually, no, those are internal, so you don't even have to do that because it's just going to have them sign up for the newsletter. It won't leave GMP. But this one, you definitely need to do that. So you can just plop these in at the end, especially if it's something that relates to, like, I probably will go back and use this. When raising boys in today's changing world is one of the toughest jobs, blah, blah, blah. I'll plop this one into you so you can see what happens. So I'm, again, Control-C. And with this, you don't need, because it's not code, you don't need to be in the text view. Boom. There it is, all set up. But I want to show you how to put in the like on Facebook too, because it's an icon that is code and it's a little different. So here's my code. And when you're selecting code, make sure you get it all. I don't code, so I don't always notice if I'm missing one of these little in tags or if I'm missing a div tag or whatever, and it can just mess things up royally. So just make sure that when you copy the code, you get all of it. Okay, I just did Control-C, so it's on my clipboard. I go back to text view, scroll down to the bottom where I would want that to go. I would want it to go right under, Control-V. There's my code. Doesn't look very pretty over there, right? Click back to visual. There's what it's going to look like, but I have one more step because this code takes them to Facebook. I don't want them to leave GMP to go to Facebook. So I'm going to highlight it. So you see that picture is highlighted. Go up here to Edit Link. So it's Insert Edit Link. And I'm going to say, open that link in a new tab or window. Okay? So now you know how to do that. I really like this particular call to action because it relates to the post. So I'm going to leave that instead of the like on Facebook. 2 calls to action is really a little bit much. I'm going to update, and now we just have one last check and job to do. J.J. Vincent taught me this, and I love this pattern. It's kind of a big U. So you start at the top. Is the title the way I want it? I'll give you a tip. Spell check in your mind. Your title, I had one really embarrassing error because it was a word. It just wasn't the word I wanted, and it was in the title. And if you publish with something in the title that's not what you want, it's the devil's own time fixing everything within the URL and within Facebook links. So just make sure it says what you want it to say. A lot of times I'll read it aloud. Will prioritizing my son's emotional well-being emasculate him? There. That's what I want. Check to make sure that your slug's in there if you're the editor. Look at the picture. Make sure that your deck is centered and it's styled. So it's in italic and it's in the paragraph 2 style. Make sure you have your 3 little divider lines and that they're centered. Everything's in order. You kind of glancing for those little red things still. And then keep going. Keep going. Some people don't put in their SEO. I'm not an SEO expert, but I always drop in the obvious. If it's a longer post, something you want to hide the e-buzzing on, make sure that you've turned that off. Make really, really, really sure that you have an excerpt in there. Have I stressed that enough? You guys sick of that yet? If you put in a customized URL with a slug, it will appear here. Make sure that the author is the person it should be, especially if it's not you. I seriously have nightmares about publishing something under my name when it's not my post. Make sure your featured image matches your title image if you want to. And then we're coming up. You see how we did a U? We came all the way to the bottom. We're coming up. And now we come into the last two pieces that you're going to do before you can walk away from your post. One is to put in tags. I love Lisa's approach to this. She puts in tags that are specific to this particular post. So if I had referenced, for instance, a celebrity, I would make sure the celebrity's name was in there. If I had referenced a particular event, day, I would even put it in with the hashtag so that it would, if there's something that's being talked about a lot in the form of a hashtag, like not all men, obviously, was hashtag form. However I want to tag it, this is how it's going to get found just out there in the the void that is the interwebs, where people just put in random words and see what comes up. So you want to make sure that everything that could be associated is. Obviously, this is about raising boys. So the neat thing is I can put in something that's kind of general, like, okay, it's about raising boys. What else is it about? Well, it's moms raising boys, right? Because this is a single mom. So I can use that, and then I can just put in raising boys by itself. And, yeah, we can just put that in as a higher level search term, above raising boys, which is more specific. I can put in dog mauling. Don't have anything for that, but, it never hurts. Let's see if it's in there. Children. No, but it should be. And living with. I don't know why that didn't grab it, but there we go. And then I like to spell it out because whoever's searching might not use the acronym. So there, post-traumatic stress syndrome, boom. So we've added that. And then once you've kind of gone through and you're like, okay, what are really specifics, then you can go down here and choose from some of the ones we use most often. Obviously, it's about boys. It's about children. It's about divorce because she's a single mom. It's about gender because we're talking about whether or not everything would have been different if she'd have had a little girl instead of a little boy. It's about manhood and masculinity because they're questioning whether or not she's emasculating her son. It's definitely about parenting. So you can see now we've built this, pretty good slew of tags that people might find this post under if they were searching. And the last thing, and you can also do it when you schedule it. A lot of times I'll do it when I schedule it. But the last thing you want to check, make absolutely sure, is that uncategorized is never checked. And in our log, this is going under raising boys as the category, and it is going in featured posts. And again, if you're not an editor, don't worry about what you just saw in the log. It's no big deal. Your editor will take care of it. But I'm going to come down here, and it's going to go in featured posts, featured content right there. And then I'm going to go down to raising boys as the primary section it's going in. Update. And I believe we have just completely finished that entire post. The title is good, the slug is in, the picture is good, the division, styling, it looks good. We've got a call to action. Well, hopefully, especially if it's a new reader, we'll engage them in future updates, and it's specific to, in this case, it's specific to the topic in the post. We have photo accreditation, also very, very important. We have some general SEO. There are definitely people you could learn more about SEO than you're ever going to learn from me. That's who I learned it from. We have the excerpt. We have everything checked out. The featured image is in. We've got a nice group of search tags set up. It is set up for the right categories. It is set up for the right time. So, if you want to check it one more time, if you have that tendency that we're not going to put a name to right now like I do, you might want to skim it one more time, because this is what people are going to see when they come in on that post once it goes live. One other thing that I will tell you, never, ever, ever share something that's a preview, or worse yet, if you just view the post and it's not in preview form. If you're going to send it to somebody else to look for or to look at, and especially if you're a contributor wanting to send this to your editor, copy the URL of your draft, and that's so you just copy this and send that to your editor or to anybody that you're asking for a second opinion. Say, hey, can you look at this? Because should somebody actually try to share it from a preview or from a view post before it's live, the whole system goes wacko. It's just like it loses its mind. I can't even tell you. Well, I could, because I did it once, but don't ever do that. So enough said on that. If you are an editor at that point, you want to come over to your log. We're going to take this out of draft, and we're going to mark it as scheduled, so that whoever's running the log today, which today happens to be me and Willem, will know, okay, that one's in, it's scheduled, it will go live at the appropriate time. And that, I believe, is everything that I know to tell anyone right now about setting up a post. I'm sure other things will come up, and maybe if we put this in YouTube, we can put additional information or suggestions, or I may find there are easier ways to do some of the things that I'm doing, and we can put those in comments or even remake one of these. But hopefully that is helpful. Thanks a lot. And if you have any questions, I will say you're welcome to email me. You can email, obviously, Lisa or your editor or your executive editor if you're an editor. But if you want to drop a question to me about why I did something a certain way, it's just dixiegillaspie@gmail.com. That's DIXIEGILLASPIE@gmail.com. Thanks, everybody.